started on the street, everything stopped, and they're all standing aside looking like, watching me take the street, everything in the street, everyone, this guy. And I say, oh, man, I'm really coming on to that acid. I really want to go hear some music. Will you take me down to the stage to hear some music? So now this guy says, okay, and me and him walk out the door and he's going down to the stage. Now he's so busy focused on me that he's not bumming out about his trip anymore. So now we go down the stage and the music is great. We're jumping around and he's smiling. We're having a great time. He's having a good time. So I say, hey, let's go back and see the doc. Right? So then we went back, and when I walked in with him and he was smiling and happy and having a good time, that's when the doc said, okay, and he told them they got makeup and lipstick and they put the clown's noses on all the nurses and stuff. That was one of the most fun places to be at Woodstock after that point. Total chaos, but it was fun chaos.
Joe, how'd you meet Bill Graham?
That's a great story.
It was funny, the same guy that was the usher at the Fillmore, he just got a job being an usher at the Fillmore, who turned us on to Olga and Judy. One day he comes down to me and he says, Bill Graham wants to see you. So I said, why would Bill Graham want to see me? I don't know, Bill Graham don't know me. And he said, well, I told him about you. And I said, well, what'd you tell him? He said, I told him you could get any kind of pot or any kind of hash in the city, and he wants to see you. So I said, okay. So I went up to see Bill Graham, and this guy brought me up to see Bill Graham, and Bill Graham says to me, can you get an ounce of red Lebanese hash and an ounce of real Acapulco gold? And I said, yeah, I could get it. And he said, well, you know, the Jefferson Airplane was supposed to play here, and in their rider on their contract, they said they wouldn't play unless I had an ounce of red Lebanese hash and an ounce of Acapulco gold backstage when they showed up. And he said, and they'll bust my balls, they won't play, you know? So I said, it was funny because I actually had Acapulco gold back at my apartment and I had red Lebanese hash. I said, I can get it for you. And he says, well, I'll pay you the highest price for it. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'll sell it to you at my cost if you'll give me the 6th row seats. And I'll pay for them, but give me the 6th row seats for every show. And anytime you need something for one of your bands, if they want pot, I said, I don't sell pills or powders, but if they want pot or hash, I'll sell it to you for my cost. And all I want is the 6th row. So at that point, me and Charlie, for every single show at the Fillmore, we had the 6th row. Every single show.
Wow.
The Fillmore East.
Wow.
So since you had 6th row seats, you must have seen a lot of bands at the Fillmore.
Oh, we saw every band that played at the Fillmore, but it was funny because me and Charlie were addicted to hearing rock and roll at that point in time. There was a place called the Electric Factory out in Philadelphia, so we used to catch the shows on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at the Fillmore. Right? So he starts screaming that and carrying on, and then he says to their manager, if they ain't up on stage, I'm going to sue them. Right? Procol Harum actually crawled on hands and knees from the dressing room onto the stage. And when they were playing, halfway through the show, the drummer fell off the back of the stage. They were so fucked up. But I'll tell you what, it was a great show.
Yeah.
We're trying to set the record straight of what really happened and what LSD. How did the commune start?
He's funny.
It kind of started on 6th Street, but we were getting too big. Too many people were living on 6th Street with us. And so he found a place that was an artist cooperative commune. Each floor was artist in residence, right? And there were 2 lofts available. And some friends of ours from New Jersey, Guy and Amanda came, and they brought this other friend of theirs, John, and then the parents knew where they were. They were runaways. She was a runaway, so they wound up moving in with us. Then everybody that went in the table was snoring sunshine. And the first time they played, believe it or not, there was only maybe the first 10 rows of people who
Good God.
At the Fillmore. The next time the whole Fillmore was full. The first time they played, there was only 10 rows of people. And most of it was our friends. We gave Tom a couple of Guitar and Sunshine. Everybody in the loft was tripping on Sunshine. And I was sitting on the couch and we were listening to music. And Tom was sitting on the floor, leaning against the couch. And all of a sudden he sat up. And I thought he was having a bad trip. Right? And I said, "You okay, Tom? What's happening?" He said, "Oh, I just had a revelation. I just had an idea, great idea." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "What do people want more than drugs?" I said, "I don't know what people want." This is in the 60s when everybody was taking drugs. I said, "I don't know what people want more than drugs. Maybe money?" And I thought about it and said, "No, it wouldn't even be money because people are spending their money to get drugs. I don't know." And he said, "They want information about drugs." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "I'm going to start a magazine. I'm going to get rich. I'm going to start a magazine giving people information about drugs." And then I thought he was tripping and it was just, a fantasy, right? And I also said, "Tom, you just made $2 million selling hash. What makes you think that you're going to start a magazine and make more money than you're making now?" Right? He said, "You watch, I'm going to do it." And then I didn't see Tom for a while. And then he came back up the loft and he had a big stack wrapped in twine of 100 or 150 High Times magazines. Just sold $2 million worth of hash. I said, "Well, why don't you go to all of the dealers that you know and give them the magazines and tell them to put one copy. Every time they sell a pound of weed or a pound of hash, put a High Times magazine in. And the first High Times magazine, the first issue, went out to all dealers. And then, because they hit the streets and people seen them and they were popular, a distributor came to Tom and said he wanted to distribute Tom's magazine. And that's how High Times started. Right?
Didn't you say Ave August?
Yeah, Abby used to come there quite often, but a lot of the people in the community really didn't like that Abby was coming. And Abby, I used to get high with Abby in the park, and I knew Abby from around town, so he used to come up there, and he'd come up there to see me. And, sometimes to score some weed, and or to trip. But a lot of the people in the community didn't like Abby coming because Abby was followed by the feds everywhere he went. I liked Abby, and quite a few famous people also came. It wasn't just Abby, but Abby was just, unfortunately, Abby was just constantly followed by the feds.
Yeah.
I felt sorry for Abby, I liked Abby a lot.
Didn't the feds know about you if there were so many of you?
Yeah.
I'm sure, not at that time, but eventually, in chapter 5 or 6 or 7, I'll tell you more about the feds and us. But at that time, it was really crazy because everybody was dealing. I mean, we did deals that we know came from the feds. We did deals that we know came from, what is the Jewish Secret Service again? Mossad. There was a guy from Mossad. They used to call him Gani Jim because he was the guy that brought in all the Afghani hash, and he was a high-up officer in Mossad. Back then, it was like feds and heads. I mean, the hippies were dealing, and the feds were dealing. Military intelligence was bringing stuff in from Vietnam. The CIA was dealing. Everybody was dealing. We figured that if we turned on the whole world LSD, that we'd change society and bring about a utopian society.
So you weren't in the money?
No, well...
With the feds?
No, we weren't. We spent the money as fast as we made it, and most of the time we spent it on a party, living, bands, and music, and the time Shannon was single and Iggy was single. Sometimes they'd be together, sometimes they'd be with other people, but most mostly it was couples, you know, and we didn't really have orgies or, you know, and some...
Get the record straight about what happened in the 60s and what drugs were about. I myself was a little bit young. I was on the West Coast, but I did get interested in transcendental meditation, which was, you know, the interest in meditation came from this experience of awakening and opening. And many, many years went by. I faithfully practiced meditation, and then I went to India for a long time, did long practices there, and then came back, worked with Jane Goldberg about radioactive stones, low-level radioactive stones and the cancer cure, and posted on YouTube. And people told me about the... Thank you. They told me about Rick Simpson's hemp oil. And I started to look at the compelling evidence about what hemp oil did. And the one thing I want to say, and then turn this over to Joe, is that there's a group of young people in Denver, and these people, they posted their work, and if you Google vitamin...
Now the important thing is that you need to be free, and the idea of a free market means that the best product will naturally rise to the top. And in order to get these kinds of results, you need good products to start with, good strains of marijuana.
The oil then will produce the results that you're looking for. So I just wanted to do a shout out to
Kyle Marsh and the people in Denver, because when Colorado looked like it was going to be so pot-friendly, these guys were really enthusiastic that the state law was helping them and that it was going to, give good results to people. And then as soon as they got the good results, the laws started tightening up. Those that had licenses all of a sudden found out the licenses were very expensive. And the people who were depending on this, particularly with life-threatening diseases, couldn't get it, and they had to still get it illegally. Those that got it illegally were able to get cured, and there were some very, very dramatic cures. I think, one guy had cancer all over his face. It looked quite horrible. And now that he's been cured, he's going for plastic surgery and reconstruction. And that's why Joe and I are so against regulation of any kind. One litmus test of a cannabis initiative is, will it free prisoners? We have 500,000 people in prison for victimless crime. Now thanks to Joe, he can talk about his evolution of how he got to this place. But you cannot take a right, like say the right to grow a plant, and convert it into a privilege, charge a license and a fee for it. And the other day, quite accidentally, we were walking out the front door of my apartment and we found a whole vast film crew there. And I started to realize I have a right to travel freely as a constitutional, it's insured by the Constitution. So I thought I would exercise my right to travel freely, and this would be a litmus test to see if we really need licenses for marijuana. And it was a little scary. The policemen were pretty slick. They had their rap down. But I didn't know, how deep they understood it. I had the camera off for a lot of the time that I was getting these threats, so you don't even see what's posted on YouTube, why I was so frightened. But I still knew that this was a battle that I had to face. And so I knew that my intent was not to ruin the Talbots commercial, but my intent was to understand if I have a constitutional right to travel freely. So I had one discussion with one officer, another with another, and finally a sergeant came, the head of the whole TV and movie unit. And lo and behold, I was not arrested. I've got the whole thing recorded on YouTube. And, we want to do this again. Joe spoke to the libertarians. He said to the libertarians, oh, Fred, just listen to this last thing. Joe said to the libertarians, you have to be more active. I had no idea that we would be taking our own medicine on this, and that's the importance of what I've posted as the right to travel freely in Gramercy Park. And then Gramercy Park fights back because the police officers never arrested me. I don't know if there's going to be repercussions because this was a very expensive shoot. But this is definitely a shout out because there will be more. It happens about every other, as I send the tape, every other fucking week. They treat us like a Hollywood set, and I would like more people to join me, and we can exercise our right to travel freely and test the Constitution that way.
Could you say that again?
The right to travel freely is a constitutional right. There's a lot of Supreme Court case rulings on this, and if we really get this down, we can extend these constitutional rights to many other things. I mean, health care and so on. Shuttlesworth versus Birmingham. It says you cannot take a right, convert it into a privilege, and charge for it. So the question, Joe pointed out, is we're looking at the footage again and again, that these three police officers, who are they working for? Are they working for Joe pointed out, as we're looking at the footage again and again, that these three police officers, who are they working for? Are they working for the film crew? And if they're working for the film crew, that means the taxpayers are paying for it. If they're not, if the taxpayers aren't, it means they're moonlighting with their uniform, and that's also a big problem. Oh, there you go.
That idea has
You want to come and speak before? Okay. But just to say, Google vitamin cannabis, because we feel that these boys, these young people, need better legal support. There were raids in California on raw milk, and it even went into the organic food in their warehouses. And this is very troubling. They were very happy that they had an attorney that got them out on bail for $30,000. But we still feel they can go in a more profound direction. I mean, Joe Friendly helped with the demurrer. He might want to talk about that too. So, Joe, do you want to say a few words? I just want to say vitamin cannabis. Google vitamin cannabis. If you don't do anything else this evening, you remember vitamin cannabis. Google it. Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to do a long rap, but the main thing that I want to push for is, like Paula said, we have 500,000 nonviolent prisoners in jail for marijuana. It's time for all of us to get off our butts and start doing something to free these people. Start doing something to free these people. You know? It's really important that we all do something. And that's all I really want to say. Thank you.
Joe, can I ask one thing? Where exactly was the lock? You said it was on West Street?
The Lost was on Vestry Street, right by the Holland Tunnel.
At 6th Avenue or 6th Street?
No. Did I? No. Yeah, it was on the west side, right by the Holland Tunnel. You know where the police station is for the Holland Tunnel? It's right on that same street. Yeah, over near Canal Street. Yeah. Thank you. We have 12 chapters altogether. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of years ago?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Really good. I think that's a whole genre.
Put on the earphones, see if you can hear me. Well, do we have good sound? Hey, it works.
you're going to sing?
I'd like to sing about marijuana. So, my grand plan was to talk, this is more than usual, to talk to.
What's that about?
I just said more than usual. I didn't say Israel.
Oh, I thought you said Israel. Not getting a hearing aid in a couple of weeks.
Maybe this would light me better. Will this give me more light? Does that help?
No.
Okay.
But it's still nice when you're sitting.
Yeah.
It's a nice bar.
Okay. So, the hope I have for getting the people out of the prison, which is a strange idea that you give people argument that Paula made earlier, that there are constitutional rights that aren't supposed to be turned into privileges, is a good point. And now we got a little. Does the music mess it up pretty good? Okay. You're messing up my shot.
I'm a monkey on your back. I'm a monkey on the side.
Really?
Stick them up.
I need a drink.
I get it. I'll do it.
He's going to explain important legal.
The argument that Paula made earlier, that there are constitutional rights that aren't supposed to be turned into privileges, is a good point. And now we got a little. Does the music mess it up pretty good? Okay. So here's how to get your marijuana law switched over to an opportunity to let everybody out of prison. Your marijuana bust. If anybody gets busted, here's what you say. They say, how do you plead? And you say, instead of pleading guilty or innocent to the charges, Your Honor, I challenge the charges themselves as based upon a law that I hold to be unconstitutional and would like opportunity to explain to the court why indeed it is unconstitutional. If I can show the court fundamental constitutional rights that are at stake, then I don't win up front, Your Honor, but I do then ask the court to announce the burden has shifted to the government, to the state. Can they justify the law somehow or other? Is it rationally based on some need for public safety or some argument they got to come up with? So the fundamental constitutionally protected rights are the right of liberty, mainly. That's the big one. Marijuana is about liberty. There's another big one that is also involved, and I would call that freedom of thought. That it just so happens that marijuana is called a drug, and people don't have a clear idea what it does as a drug. But we do know this about marijuana by now, that Jefferson loved it, Washington loved it, Madison loved it, that there is something very democratic about marijuana. It returns each individual to the sense of sovereignty of a king. What American people don't realize is that when the words equality were first conceived by the founding fathers, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. Those words were addressed to the King of England. We were saying we are equal to you, the King of England, that our sovereignty, we can feel it so clearly with marijuana, is just as high as yours. And therefore, we want that enshrined in literature, in philosophy. The Renaissance finally materialized in the form of American government as the people having at least one of the branches of the legislature and the rich having the other. Anyhow, so if you can show the court freedom of thought is involved, that, well, let me put it another way. It is up for grabs at this point what the marijuana effect is like, except that the president has tried it. Obviously, Clinton tried it. And when you experience the marijuana effect, it is sort of like revelation. Whatever that word revelation means, it's like your senses have a second chance to put things together better than the manipulated conformity trip going on. That we are a people who have been made fools of by our culture. That marijuana is one dimension of our being fooled. All our foreign policy, all the cruel things that we do around the world, the American people are fooled into believing there's something not to be ashamed about when we do such horrible things around the world. We are truly a people conned out of our birthright of the full deck. And,
The pursuit of happiness.
oh, there you go. The other right. The pursuit. I didn't bring up pursuit of happiness because it is one of those puzzles. I wonder how the courts have actually pursued that pursuit of happiness.
Have they defined it?
Yeah, I wonder. I haven't actually looked in the index system to see. Sometimes I kid around and bring sex involved. So yeah, marijuana does help a lot of people enjoy sex better. So that's pursuing happiness. So that would qualify without too much stretching of language. But anyhow, so the court is supposed to say back, okay, Joe Friendly, or whoever it is who raises this argument, instead of pleading guilty, you say, instead of pleading guilty, I want to have an opportunity to challenge the law. Now, there is a Latin called demurrer, but as I've been learning lately, they don't use that language much in New York State. That isn't, they use it in the federal system and in California sometimes. But anyhow, you can throw it at them, and the judge, the judge will look it up in the dictionary, and yeah, that's right, that's the right word, okay. No, they usually know what it means. So, demur means, I don't have to do it. Demur is like none of the above. No, thank you. I don't have to do what you're telling me to do. I can stand back, and it's basically kind of a stand back thing. I can withhold what you're asking for and go on a different trip. Like let's talk about something else kind of thing.
Is it challenging jurisdiction?
Well, in order for a law to be enforced, it has to be constitutional. If it's not constitutional, that is jurisdictional, ultimately. So you can make it as in that category of jurisdiction. There's another law that you should know about. There have been many rulings that constitutionality should be raised at the earliest opportunity. This is as early as you get. Right at the beginning, before you plead even. And indeed, why should you plead to a law that's unconstitutional? It does make sense to challenge the unconstitutionality and say, no, thank you, we're going to challenge it. But the point I wanted to make was that marijuana is so incredibly safe compared to all the other things they call drugs, and even things they don't call drugs. There is such a harmony between the hemp plant and the humans that they share a couple of the things. The HEMP and the HUMAN, it's kind of, they're brothers, that there are so many cannabis receptors throughout the body that it seems to me like there were these different tribes, and the ones who responded positively to hemp, they became the successful tribe. What do you have to do to kill you? And they have a lethal dose for tobacco, and there's a lethal dose for alcohol, and there's a lethal dose for carrot juice, and there's a lethal dose for Coca-Cola. But when it comes to marijuana, it's something like a train load. It's like what happens is when you get to the point of too much, then the body just turns off and ignores the rest. So there is that happy consequence of the body quite comfortable with marijuana. And again, once you experience it, the tricky part about marijuana, really, the tricky part, is that there is quite an individual difference in the way you experience it. So it is hard to generalize about what is the marijuana effect. But generally, we can say this. Alcohol, we have some idea that it loosens up inhibitions. Marijuana, I don't think does that.
And a touch of aggressiveness too.
Right. He said that he drives faster when he drinks. Just a couple of drinks.
Whereas with grass,
you're sensible.
You're touring.
I was with I was on a bus tour with a guy, and he told me that he had been working in California in a with the university to do a study of the effects of marijuana on driving. And the study was funded by the U.S. government. And they discovered that marijuana, compared to other things they studied, did not have a significant detrimental effect on driving. And the U.S. government chose not to publish that data because they do choose to demonize. Yeah.
What's your passive state when you're driving? Passive.
Well, I would offer the general idea. What do you? Here's where I go my own little trip. Is that my brain was developed in school to learn how to solve problems. First, I went to engineering school, and then I took a kind of a philosophical attitude toward law, and I'm trying to wonder what is the ideal way to run people's lives. And then I smoked marijuana, and all that thinking was easier to do. So I got to use marijuana right away. It was like up until then it was a strain to do all that thinking. You know, whatever your brain is doing, and I found that marijuana helped me be a better thinker. Then I finally read in my old age, the government says that it enhances synaptic connections. In other words, it makes each part of your brain function a little better. Hello, all right. Now the law has been against it for sinister reasons. You know the Frederick Vincent story? I've told that before. That Vincent is the one who started out making marijuana illegal. He happened to be chairman of the House Ways and Means, which in those days they called the House Finance Committee. So he dreamed up a finance trick by taxing marijuana so that it wouldn't go through the House Committee on Drugs, it wouldn't go on the House Committee on Health or Criminality, it just went as a tax issue. And behind the scenes, he was conspiring with Harry Anslinger, who wanted to make marijuana legal so that it would improve his empire, and then he could go bust the blacks who were the musicians and that world.
What year was this?
1937.
Okay.
So what happened was the American Medical Association sent a doctor to testify at his committee hearing, saying, "Don't do it. It's a bad idea. Leave marijuana alone. Don't tax it." And and this is online, you can read what the exchange was between Frederick Vinson, the committee chairman, and the AMA guy. And then when the legislation got to the floor of the Congress for the vote, somebody hollered out, "What's the AMA's position?" And Frederick Vinson lied and said the opposite. He said that the AMA was totally in favor of the legislation, and then it won. And the ultimate proof of how rotten our system is that Vinson becomes chief of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, like today, when I was hearing the testimony of that guy that wrote the book on that, he was saying the same thing that you were saying, that how corrupt the whole thing is.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Can you hear it? Yeah. Well, I was just saying it's a great evening. You're here in Joe's, you've been showing a couple of things I'm thinking of. One is those things that Joe does, talking about the old days back 68, Woodstock time. It's so authentic, and it's so funny, and it's so real, in a way, that it's like almost a whole nother... It's like, I don't know, maybe getting too spacey on it, but it's sort of a way of having, it's a communication kind of method. How many people are sitting down and talking that kind of thing like you've done? 12 chapters now of that kind of wit?
The 12th chapter, he says that who is really suffering now is the middle class. He said the hippies never counted on the establishment, but he feels sorry because the middle class now is seeing the results of going in a very restricted direction, very unfree. So my walking in front of the camera was more exercising my right to be free,
yes,
to travel freely. That's the point.
Specifically now what I'm talking about is if you think of society in general, is that format of somebody who's very knowledgeable of a particular time and is authentic, and it's a natural talent. It's just him, you know.
Well, in those days, you met Michael Hollingshead said, Joe, you should write a book. You should write a book. But he knew he was a dealer.
Yeah, but writing,
and if he wrote a book, it was too dangerous.
No, writing a book is not the way the world's going. What he's
he
doing.
Calls this his book.
What I'm trying to say, that's the way the world's communicating. Is there anybody else? Not drugs, not hippies, not that. Just put that aside. But somebody else, like the fashion industry or something, doing that kind of thing as a genre within the society. And I mentioned this couple that was friends of mine when I was a professor, and she ended up being, among others, Annie. I'm still in touch with her. I talked to her 4 or 5 months ago. But she ended up being, among other things, she was the editor of a magazine called Scenario for quite a while, which is, I guess, the leading thing in terms of screenwriting and so forth for people that are in screenwriting and film. Real smart, real good lady. And then she was also the managing editor of a magazine, High Times. He talked about High Times.
Yeah.
So there would be
most people don't know that High Times started as a result of a $2 million hash deal.
Yeah, it was
and
great.
An LSD trip on Orange Sunshine.
I know, it's beautiful.
So when he said in the middle of a trip, what do people want more than drugs?
Information.
Information.
Yeah, right. And it was good. He did, and
that's what we're discovering even about the law.
That was a wonderful.
You have to repeal the prohibition or you have to legalize it. You're missing the point. You need information about law. So the Constitution, man.
Well, that's another one. That's another one.
If you're not having fun, you're doing something wrong.
I love that line.
The point is the pursuit of happiness becomes really important.
Incidentally, I got a whole line I'm thinking of putting on my quote page. It was the very end of the program where I guess I called one day or something recently. Or you were? Was it today?
Yesterday.
Yesterday. I've been really spun out. A guy in from Beijing has been staying at our house, and it really had us wigged out in a lot of things and everything. But anyway, you ended up. It just got in before they went to the break. And it says, I loved it. You had a line. I almost wrote it down. It said, in the system, you're assumed guilty until proven wealthy. Oh. I thought that was brilliant.
Yes.
Brilliant.
No, he said presumption always trumps law, and the real presumption is you're guilty until proven rich.
Who is that?
That guy's name, I think, is Jon Stewart.
Oh, Jon Stewart, the comedian, yeah.
No, not Jon Stewart, the comedian. There's another Jon Stewart that Angela Stark is the
But that's a sidebar. What I'm getting at is that format. Is it in society?
No, excuse me, Harold, that's about jurisdiction.
I'm not talking...
You need to argue in the jurisdiction where you're innocent until proven guilty.
No, I love it. It's a line. No, I'm not talking... I'm talking about the 12 chapters of him doing this. What I'm asking is, there's somebody in another realm that would have countercultural artists or anything where they're doing that, where they're doing a person sitting down as it is with good questions coming, and then somebody as talented as him rapping just like he does, because that's a way of communicating. That's a really authentic way of communicating spontaneously. Is it emerging in the society? Instead of writing a book, you talk a book. And you bring you capture it just like you've done. Is it happening, not Joe, not hippies, not anything, but in general, is that emerging in the society in other fields?
I think content is what people want.
Well, no, content that is multisensorial and all of the nuance and the eyebrows and all of that. You can't get and the thing. But when he got when the guy came out, he had this great gesture. When the guy came out and said, he's going to beat us up, and he says, hippies are machine guns, I love it. And he had this gesture. It's really authentic. And I'm asking you...
It also talks about the Second Amendment, doesn't it?
Well, you don't seem to be focusing on what I'm asking you. And wouldn't there be a market for that? And my friend was the editor, I think she was for a while, of High Times. So you could put an ad in High Times, because is that industry developing where you have, I don't know, but I want to get in touch with her and see if she knows people, because you can put an ad in High Times there would be an audience for or similar magazine.
The editor of High Times, after he wrote about Rick Simpson, was taken away from that position. So
That's another issue.
No, the issue is censorship and freedom. You don't have the First Amendment right to free speech if it's being censored, and even High Times today is censored.
Well, if you got
but Joe was saying at one time, High Times was the brainchild of a person who realized more important than drugs was information. So we're talking about free speech.
But that's a side issue to an ad in the magazine to get distribution of the DVDs. There are people who think themselves they've got drugs and everything, and you have a little ad in there, DVD authentic. And I mean, she would know the DVD, the High Times crowd, Annie would, because she's there. She's off on other things. But I want to get in touch with her to see, get some distribution.
I was hoping your other guy, that older guy who has that building, who knows the rock scene.
Giorgio?
Yeah.
Well, Giorgio. Well, Giorgio or something. No, what you do, you could market it. What would you want to sell it for? And what are they, half-hour chapters?
Yeah.
Is anybody doing that? And don't think drugs, don't think hippies, don't think Woodstock, just think societal. Is there anything where that format, because that's the format that is really of the time?
We're all open.
No, but is it? So I mean, have you seen anything in your life? Have you seen anything where that's going on? Maybe something movie, people,
or YouTube? Isn't it all over YouTube? People sitting down and telling their stories?
Well, I guess maybe it is. Yeah, I guess maybe it is, but it isn't marketed. YouTube is free to everybody, or people are trying to. But there's an authentic quality to it, and it's like he's written a book. Or you've done something, and you're what if you had Abby Hoffman? What if you had Abby? I just told him I did a program with Abby Hoffman when he came up out of, and I could get in touch with Joanna. Joanna's his widow, and Abby Hoffman was underground, serious, deep underground, and he had only come up from underground.
Joe was deeper underground because they wanted to put him in the hippie book, but he didn't want to be in the book because he was a dealer. So we're talking about missing chapters from our collective history.
Yeah, right.
If we don't understand how drugs were dealt,
but that would apply to all kinds of hidden chapters and all kinds of aspects of people within the society in general. Is what I'm saying.
So you need courageous people.
Well, you don't have to be courageous. You have to be good.
No, you have to be courageous.
Well, I don't know if you keep coming.
People even today who did deals 40 years ago, and their wives are very worried about what Joe's doing. From 40 years ago.
You mean with the DVD? With the talking into a camera? Because it could be detrimental in a legal sense or something.
Some people showed up at our wedding and they wanted to be at the wedding, but they didn't know if they'd be photographed. And there were so many photographs at our wedding.
Yeah. Anyway, Joanna is somebody I'm friendly with. Joanna's his, and I told him it was February. He had been upstate at underground, deep underground. Abby was cocaine and stuff from being involved, and he was up there with Joanna, his second wife.
Abby was not as deep as these guys were. These guys didn't want Abby around because they were deeper. They didn't want the heat that Abby had.
Abby was deeper.
No,
they were middlemen.
These guys.
No, they were middlemen.
No, these guys were protecting. $2 million is what Tom Prasad had for doing.
That's what he said. Yeah, right.
That's deeper than Abbott. He had to protect that trade.
Well,
so when he started High Times, none of the publishers would touch him. Mm-hmm. So then Joe was the one that said, "Hey,
I know that's what he's.
You've already got the distribution."
Yeah, but he could write that down. He could write that down, try to get a publisher and write a book. He's put it down, and it's so fucking authentic. It's real. That format is so real for something that makes it much more valuable than something written down.
It's not because
it's a great format that you've got, and so what you
I don't think you're looking at the content.
It's not that I'm not thinking the content. I'm just thinking it as a marketing thing or as a thing.
Anybody can sit in front of a camera and talk.
Not if they have. No, they've got to have the authenticity and the spontaneity and the wit and the wisdom and the stories and everything. Like he's a special case. It's not just anybody could do that. You could have done it. Yeah, but anyway, Joanna was there. I did a program. Abby,
Can you
only...
do it?
I can't hear you.
Can you do it?
Do what?
Be authentic. What you're saying he's doing. You do it.
Well, no, but his is much more interesting to a certain group. You know, it's not. No, he's really good. It's like a talent, and it's not. It's just him. He's really good, is what I'm trying to say. Well, different. It's different thing. But anyway, I did that program.
A little more hemp oil.
I don't want to. But anyway,
So that's the point. He's saying Joe really feels that he and his group, through the drugs, actually evolved society more rapidly. But he also realizes that in a way, they fail because things are worse off unless we can get back to, I guess I would call it, stabilizing that experience.
Are you talking back to the 1970s?
No, I'm talking about a vision of oneness where you really believe in equality and due process and equal protection. That's what Joe Friendly was saying, the founding fathers
that's all good.
were having that thinking.
Yeah.
That's why it's important to have the oil, and that's why we're against regulation. If the quality is not good, the cancer cures, the Alzheimer's cures,
there's a lot of things.
Diabetes.
He's gone into.
None of that's going to work.
Has he gone into some of those things in the other chapters? I'd seen this one before about the monkey.
Oh yeah, right.
You're still doing it. Yeah, just keep doing it. And now the thing is, is like Annie Nocenti. She's on Franklin Street. I talked to her about 3 or 4 months ago. I think maybe she thinks I've gone off the deep end or something. But I could get back in touch with her. She's really authentic, good people.
Deep end into what?
I don't know, off the deep. I don't know, because she was one of my students, right? And she was, everything, and then she became.
Deep end of public access?
No, the deep end of psychological, whatever. I don't know. I'm just talking because we couldn't get together to do a thing and that. But maybe I could call her. We've been friends from way back.
Sometimes people just get busy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like Stuart Dambrot, I thought maybe he blew me off, but I found out he didn't.
Yeah.
And being a scientist, you turned me on to him.
Well, the only thing...
I told him about the mortgage stuff, and you could tell he was really paying attention. He's got the
he's
intelligence
bright.
to follow it.
Yeah.
And
but I'm thinking
I want to work with him.
But I'm thinking specifically in 2 veins now. One is Annie, because she was the managing editor of maybe 7 years ago, among other things. She had been the managing editor of a magazine, the leading magazine of scriptwriters. This is called Scenario. She had done that, but she came out on the left. Philip went out on the anyway. And then the other one is Joanna. And Joanna and I are still friends. She's Abby's widow. And I did a thing, I told him, I knew Abby pretty well from the old days. Not real well, not like him. But I knew him somewhat, and Alan and Ginsberg and stuff. But we did a program with Abby Hoffman when he just came up from underground. And they had an apartment over not too far from where we are, near the Empire State Building. And we went there to do the apartment, to do the thing with the big heavy deck and everything. And they were so poor they turned off their electricity. And we had to go with a big long extension cord from the apartment above out down the wall and into the window to light up to make the program. And I can't find it. It was done on U-matic and we can't find it. But I've been we did a program with Joanna. And she's somebody else I could get in touch with about marketing or distributing this unique way of communicating with an authenticity. And I'm just wondering why that isn't happening. I suppose there must be people trying to do that with stars and stuff. But there's where you get the authenticity, and then there's going to be people in the hosiery business that feel the same thing about a schmuck who did the hosiery thing here and it tells stories, and it's a way to communicate. And there could be people doing that if it's real and it's authentic, and he is real and authentic. He's not bullshit. You know, he really knows what the scene was, and he's just being himself. And that's authentic. It's multisensorial. It's the way the whole world's going. But there ought to be a way. High Times could put an ad in there. and then they would sell it. What would you sell it for? How would you market it if you did? If you did the chapters, you get chapter 1, 2, and 3. Are they a half an hour each, or what? Half hour. So you get 2 on a DVD or something? Four on a DVD. Sell it for what? $15, $20 or something? Or is that what you?
We'd like to, yeah.
Yeah. So you get somebody who knows that business, and there you got a niche market of druggies or people. I guess that he says it's going down.
We don't think it's druggies. We
no, but that would be people.
The thing about druggies is part of the problem.
I don't know what that means.
Well, when he was talking about the commune, he was talking about highly functioning people. In the later chapters, you're going to see how much they accomplished.
Oh, yeah.
And then you'll also see all the stuff with the feds.
There's a lot of people who do.
And how his wife was bleeding with pregnancy, and she's in chains.
Well, I could ask Anna Nocenti, or I could ask Joanna. How would you be? Where would be the means in which to tap that market? She was his widow now. And it was his second wife, Abby. But Abby was a great guy. Anyway, Joe Barton is a great guy. He is funny.
Joe told me that the Yippies actually closed down the Fillmore East because they were saying it should all be free.
Yeah.
And the tickets were $3.50 up to $5.50, and they said it should be free. And Bill Graham says, the heck with this. I quit. So the Yippies shut down something really important.
I love the Yippies. I knew them. I knew
Joe has mixed feelings. He thinks that wasn't very good to do, to shut down the Fillmore East. He said it was some of the best music that was brought.
Yeah, he said he had front 6 rows at the Fillmore West. And they're giving them all the acid going in at the first time, and the
Yippies were also the people who met the Vietnam vets when they came back from Vietnam, saying baby killers, baby killers. Constitution Man has a real issue about drugs because of that. But the Yippies were not representing what the hippies and what Joe was doing.
Well, the Yippies were. I like the Yippies.
To sit there and call people baby killers. After they get back from Vietnam, it's very traumatic.
Well, they did kill babies.
But that's not right.
Why? Why not?
Because Joe was in Vietnam.
And
Joe watched all of that. He didn't wear his uniform. He was ashamed of it.
Yeah.
But others that wore their uniform back, to be treated that way is to put all the blame and the onus on the soldier.
No, it's not. I mean, you could take.
Baby killer?
Why not? I mean, we killed about 4 million people.
The Yippies, in many ways, killed some of the beautiful parts of what Joe's talking about.
I don't. Well, maybe not.
Talk to Joe about it.
Well, I could. He should do it. He could talk about the difference.
He doesn't. I mean,
I was partial.
I'm telling you a backroom story.
Yeah.
He's trying to figure out who is really helping consciousness and who might even be paid to stop it. Because ultimately you're talking about constitutional. Some people are going to want to take a right and convert it into a privilege and charge for it. It's called monopoly.
Well, it's
so you're
part
always going to have a tension, and the founding fathers knew that. So they talk about the belligerent claimant, that you have to stand up belligerently, which is what I found myself doing in Gramercy Park.
I was so proud of you on that tape. Was that today?
I'm hoping you'll join me.
It was wonderful. Were you holding the camera when the young man was talking to the officer, the police officer? Were you holding the camera? Yes, you were. You didn't have somebody else doing it. No. You had to show he was there, and you were taking pictures, perfectly framed, perfectly good audio. Everything was good. It was fantastic. You're really good. That's what Van Gogh used to say about painting beautiful paintings. You're really good with the camera, and you're always good with the tech. I think it's wonderful.
No, it's authenticity. I was scared. If you listen to my voice, you can hear I'm scared.
I didn't hear the tremble. I heard you very strong, making the case. And were you making it up? The linking, it was a spontaneous thing. It wasn't something you had scripted.
Well, I've been spending hours, days, and months on these legal cases,
right.
So I knew law better than the police.
And he's saying
but his sergeant knew that to false arrest me even for 10 minutes, is a very big crime.
I don't know, why is that such a big crime? They do false arrest all the time.
They shouldn't.
No, but they do. They do,
shouldn't.
particularly up in Harlem, a lot of that. Or they shake you down.
If people don't stand up and if they're not informed, we think this is one of the most important
Oh, yeah.
things. And that's what we think
Well, I agree
drugs
with you.
can do. They get you familiar with a very free space. And you go, why can't I be here all the time? Why do I care about, how I'm thought?
Yeah,
if I know this is a good thing and
Yeah.
somebody else is saying it's a bad thing, why am I believing that?
Well, you see, for me, the 70s wasn't that big a deal about drugs. It was there and everything, but that wasn't the big deal. There were much more important things that were going on. But that's another
Joe
issue.
really feels that the volume that went through that law really turned down first the artists, and then the artists would turn on others. So in a way,
Turn on? What do you mean?
Tune in, turn on, and drop out.
That's Leary,
Turn
yeah.
on.
Yeah,
Turn
yeah,
on.
yeah.
Just to take your brain and allow it to experience its fullest potential.
I'm completely in accord with Joe that I'm very concerned about the state of the world. Really concerned. We're heading for a depression. The right wing is coming on like gangbusters.
And yet I could walk across the street and challenge 3 policemen.
And I wonder if you'll be able to do that a year from now. I'm very worried
about it.
about
on Sunday.
Yeah, okay, good.
Barbara Rosenfeld said that if Wendy Barrett walks across, Barbara will walk across.
Mm.
So that would be 3 of us. I don't know if Wendy will do it or not, but Wendy's quite desperate. So, I'm saying we can only go so far with public access. We need to walk our talk. We got to walk our talk. We got to stand up. We got to challenge.
Well, that principle of taking a right, converting—that's a term I've heard from you. I've only heard it from you. It's made me think.
Well, no, it's Shuttlesworth versus Birmingham.
Well, is that the language that comes out of it? The United States Supreme Court ruling?
Yes. There's quite a few of them.
Good for you and
But
Constitution.
But it's taken 18 years for Constitution Man to develop this argument.
Yeah. Yeah, the Constitution Man is really good. There's somebody. Does he have all his stuff on video?
He's now, he's a little driven underground because he thinks that he doesn't want association with people because he feels that if the courts find out he's helping somebody, they may rule against the person if for no other reason than he's behind it. He feels that a lot of the judges now are in the pockets of the bank.
Of course.
But they're flat out really illegal the way they're doing.
Yeah, the whole.
On the other hand, some people have closed down entire law firms because the notaries, the in-house notaries, notarize for a trustee that's a fabricated person, and that's the trustee you have to meet in court.
I think that somehow
the trustee won't show up.
Yeah.
You've won the case, and you could turn the IRS on them.
Rosalie, pretty good computers and cyber and all that and everything. I think you talk about you should study Constitution Man and you and Joe. That's something you do a lot of. Could they have a thing where the knowledge that he has, and he's going through case number 673, and then you go to this code and that. Could that be cybernated, or could that be algorithmic, where you could just, instead of you...